Hello and welcome to the Thriller Zone. I'm your host, David Temple, and as you can see, it's Casual Friday, except it's Wednesday. We have had a couple of little technical issues here of late, trying to hook up with today's guests. So today's performance, technically, is not going to be tip-top like we usually have it. We had a connection problem on one end, so we went to a different program, still had the problem, called in my wife, Tammy, thank goodness, and we hooked it up on Zoom. However, as you will see, all three of us are not on the camera at the same time, so it could be a little confusing at first. Just telling you all that so that you know what the story is. I'm your host, Dave Temple. Welcome to episode, who knows what it is, but it's summertime, so as you can see, it's a little bit casual around here. A couple of quick notes. If you want to be on the show, I'm going to really suggest strongly that you have a microphone that works in addition to your laptop. I think you're going to really appreciate it. You're going to sound better. Have a little light on your face, whether it's a window or a spotlight or a lamp. It really does help. And Wi-Fi. If your Wi-Fi sucks, so will the show. So just a word to the wise is sufficient. Today's show, two guys. You're going to see me announce it again. James Byrne with Chain Reaction, Bruce Borgos, The Blue Horse. Very excited to have both of these guys on the show. And as always, if you would like to be on the show, probably more after the summer vacation break that we're going to have here very soon, love to hear from you. thethrillerzone@gmail.com. So without any further ado, how about you and I get on into the Thriller Zone? If you knew what it took us to get here, you would be going, I'm glad this show's free. No, it's been, gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having us back yet again.
We tried this, folks, last week, and we had some tech issues. James is in downtown Portland in a high-rise. It's a very handsome condo. And Mr. Borgos is in a very gorgeous alpine-ish cabin in the middle of where?
Southern Utah in the mountains, about 8,000 feet.
Ooh, that's nice.
This is why I'm wearing a jacket.
Well, I'm glad we were able to make this happen. It is not without some challenges, but that's one thing about this trusty Thriller Zone. You just keep going. Now, you guys can jump in here anytime you want. We're on Zoom. Zoom is not my ordinary territory. I like Riverside FM, nothing against Zoom. But we had to resort to this. Oh my God, I just saw Tammy's name is down here.
Yes.
Hi, yes, I'm Tammy. Just ignore that. We're on her account. But anyway, we're talking about two fabulous books. James is back. James is new to the show. Chain Reaction is this little bad boy. And then Bruce is back with The Blue Horse. Everybody knows my good buddy, Mr. Borgos. But I'm telling you, these are two stacked books of reading deliciousness. Jump in, guys.
Well, we're glad to be here. Bruce's book just came out. Mine came out in January, and we're thrilled to be with you, Tammy.
Yes, it's always great to see you. But let me just say real quickly, if you're new to James's writing, just like he's a little bit new to Dave, and maybe some of your listeners, he is a fabulous writer. His books, especially this series featuring the amazing Des Limerick, are just a treat to read. I mean, so exciting and so well crafted.
Thank you. I'm also a huge fan of Bruce's current series, and we have the same publishing house, and we have the same editor, and we're now a team.
Yeah, and we used to have the same agent.
That's right. That's right.
Who sadly recently passed. But let me ask you this, because I'm going to repeat things that we had in our first conversation that got removed because of tech issues. So we'll just pretend it's all from brand new, fresh. How did you guys meet, and what started this bromance love affair?
every year at the World Mystery Convention, which is also known as BoucherCon, the Minotaur St. Martin's folks have a cocktail party. And a couple of years ago, I was in the delightful city of San Diego, which I don't know well at all. And everybody who's edited by a guy named Keith Kayla, we all gathered around him, and Bruce and I met there. And one of the things that we kind of oddly discovered about the writers who are edited by Keith is that Keith seems to go out of his way to edit nice people you want to meet. There was a guy named Steve Uzani was there too, and it was just we ended up hanging out I don't know, 4 or 5 of us for the entire cocktail party. We just more or less ignored everybody else, and it was grand fun.
Yep, absolutely.
I was at that particular BoucherCon because it's right here in my backyard, but I had several things in the air. So I bopped in, got to meet some people, got to see Bruce, did not get to meet you, James, and then was on my way. But Bruce, you've been at this. This is number 3 on.
Yeah, it's number 3 in the Porter Beck series.
Thank you. But it's you have other books before that. Let's just do this. Let's just shoot out of the gate with what is Porter up to now. One thing, refresh my memory because I've read a few books since then. Was Detective Charlie Blue Horse his girlfriend in the last book that I don't? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she was. And so just a quick synopsis. Porter Beck is the sheriff of a very rural county in Nevada called Lincoln County. He recently, in the last few years, returned from a career in Army intelligence and ended up taking the job of sheriff that his dad had held for more than 30 years. And Lincoln County, very interestingly, sits right next door to the very top secret area in the Nevada desert that the federal government occupies and does strange things in. So it's right next to Area 51 and all the alien stuff. And so he continually encounters some really interesting cases and situations. And then, yeah, he met Charlie Blue Horse in the second novel in the series called Shades of Mercy. And that she has become his girlfriend, and a pretty serious relationship developing there. And then we move into the Blue Horse, where Porter is trying to figure out who is taking out some of the people associated with the government's roundup of wild horses, which is not a popular thing because of the way that those roundups are conducted. And there's a big contingent of people on the other side who are trying to stop them. But lots of nefarious things going on. So that's kind of where we get to when we get to the Blue Horse.
Nice. Let me ask an odd question. It's probably been asked 10,000 times. Who came up with Area 51? When did that start? Why is that little tiny spot? So we'll use the word magical in air quotes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Area 51 is a place that was not publicly acknowledged by the government, I believe, until the late 90s. It was rumored to be a place for several decades. It actually began in the 1950s, about the mid 1950s, I think. And the first thing that actually happened at Area 51 after they fenced it all off from the other part of the Nevada test site, where we were blowing up all the atomic weapons above ground and testing all of those. The first thing that happened there was we brought in the new U-2 plane, surveillance plane. And that's where we kept it. We needed a secret place to test it. And the Nevada desert is a huge expanse of land, if you don't know that. So it's very easy to fly planes in an area like that is not heavily populated at all and keep it a secret. So that's the first thing that happened there. And then, of course, as we know, all you have to do is watch the X-Files on TV to realize lots of other stuff occurred there over the subsequent decades.
I think I mentioned to you in one of our earlier conversations, I'm working on a novel right now that is based in almost solely in Las Vegas for a number of different reasons. And I have found what I find so interesting for some bizarre reason, and I've traveled back and forth across the country during my radio career and stopped in a lot of cities. and towns and states. And Nevada is its own particular kind of world. And what I like about this area in your book, it's a character in and of itself. And that's kind of the way I'm doing it in my book. I mean, Vegas, for instance, is its own microcosm, but Nevada in general seems to be its own little world. And I really dig that about how you weave it in as a character.
Yeah, I think it's, I think we said probably last time, there's a lot of low hanging fruit for me to grab as a writer to talk about rural Nevada. Again, it's most people are acquainted with Las Vegas and Reno, but outside of that, people who live anywhere east of here, especially, and have never visited the state, really have no idea of everything that happens here and how big the state actually is. So you're right, Dave. There is plenty of opportunity to take Nevada and all of its interesting things and really describe it to people in such a way that it becomes a character. I mean, it's very scenic in a great deal of the state. Yeah. Where my books take place is really high desert for the most part, but there's plenty of mountains. Nevada is actually the most mountainous state outside of Alaska, and most people don't know that. It has more peaks over 10,000 feet than anywhere else, I think, too, maybe other than like Colorado or Alaska. So the terrain itself is really a marvelous thing to incorporate into these stories. And it also impacts what my characters can do.
All right. Before I jump over to Dana, I want to say one of my favorite things about Porter Beck was that how you, and we talked about this, it doesn't follow that traditional thriller mold. He's more introspective. I don't want to say sensitive because that makes you think one thing, but introspective. And so it always makes me wonder what drove you to not use that classic hard action archetype, whether it's a Jack Reacher or, fill in the blank.
Well, I think the reason I did that primarily was because we all have seen very strong characters in modern Western literature. I'm thinking of C.J. Box and Craig Johnson, the Longmire and Joe Pickett characters. And although Joe Pickett's he's not a Superman either, but I always thought there's plenty of pages and books already taken up with heroes in those stories who are almost indestructible in some ways.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, here I have this very rugged setting, and I do have a somewhat rugged guy, but he's by no means a Superman at all, and he has problems. And he has, in Porter's case, he has a vision problem. He cannot see at night. He can see pretty well during the day, but he suffers from night blindness, which is a degenerative disease. And that is slowly taking its toll on him. And, he needs help. He needs the help of his deputies and other people.
Well, now let's flip the page a little bit to Dana. And Dana, I've got this two-part question that's burning a hole in me. And Desmond, all right, how do I say this? Aloysius? Aloysius, that's it. Aloysius Limerick, based on chain reaction. Number one, how in the wide world of sports did you come up with that name? And it's delicious in and of itself. And how did you come up with his rare mix of part rogue, part philosopher, part sleuth? So we'll go 1, 2.
I just love the genre. I love the single male action adventure, the lead child, the reacher genre. And I wanted to try my hand at it, but I couldn't do what everybody else had done. I needed to make this guy different. So like Bruce and like Porter, I tried to find ways to make my characters stand out. A couple of ways. He's very, very good in a fight. Very strong fellow, powerfully built. But one, he's English. He's from the UK. And secondly, although he doesn't sound like it, he's got this engineering technical background. And then third, I decided if I have this guy who's big and tough and good in a fight, why don't I give him the stupidest name I could think of? Because it would be so easy to slip into toxic masculinity with this kind of character if he was perfect. So I came up with Limerick because I'm an Irishman myself, and Limerick is a fun word. And then I desperately didn't want to use a Joe or a Jake or a Jack because there were about 12 million of those in this genre.
Yeah.
So Des is good because it's one syllable and it's got a Z in it, and that's fun. And then finally, Aloysius, it's just simply the silliest name of all time. And so when you put them together, you get this absolutely ridiculous name. And almost every book, at one point, somebody says to him, "No, seriously, what really is your name?" And he's like, "It's a perfectly good name. This is my name." And
Yeah.
it let me let me add a second flavor to the sauce until it was just a one note character.
So well done. So go ahead and give me the spin on chain reaction. So folks who were debating, and I apologize, I didn't realize it came out in January. I knew it was springish, but any new?
Um,
Go ahead.
Okay, so this is the third of so far 4 books. The fourth one is with my editor and is coming out next year. Des is 35 years old. He's retired from a military. I never say which one it is. And he's come to the United States and he's roaming around with a guitar on his back and just getting into trouble. And in the military, he was a breach artist. His job was to be a gatekeeper. He can open any door, keep it open for as long as it's necessary, and control who does and does not get through it. That was his expertise. So in this book, we find him lured to Las Vegas, where a terrorist incident is going on, and that's about the first third of the book. And soon we realize that there's a whole different thing going on beneath that. The terrorist incident is sort of a setup for another set of crimes that is being masked beneath it. So we spend this book. First book was in LA, second one was in Oregon, where I live, and this third book, New Jersey, New York City. And unlike Bruce has the ability to have an actual character in his setting, and he paints it so incredibly well and so thoroughly that I feel like I've been there. But Des bounces to a different venue in every book, which allows me to have him always be a fish out of water.
Well, I admire something that you both have done. Of course, you both have now said it, in that you turned your back on the average norm, the thing that we grew up watching, the James Bond, the Jason Bourne, the Jack Reacher, and you're marching to the beat of your own drum. One of my favorite things to do, right? And so I so appreciate and respect that. And you made a good point, Dana. It is true about Bruce's book is the way he paints the story is, and all good writers do this, but for some reason, Bruce, I don't want to say he's got the market cornered, but he really does have a beautiful way of setting scene and making me feel like I'm living inside of it. You do the same thing. Yours feels, I like the way you structure your characters and the character and the way they speak and the tiny little nuances, like the opening scene in the book about they're in this car ready to get into this hairy situation. So you both have really exceptional storytelling skills. And I can now understand better why you become such close friends.
I do think our writing style is, well, first of all, how we write is vastly different. The process by which Bruce writes would make me have an aneurysm, and the process by which I write, he laughs his tail off when I tell him how I do it. But nonetheless, we have gotten to that same point where we have these very character-driven stories that are vastly different at one level, but kind of similar at another level.
Well, wait a minute. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, to add to that, I think one of the things that we do similarly in our writing style is we don't over describe things. We try to put in just enough detail to give the reader a good sense of what we're talking about, or a place that one of our characters is in, without overdoing it, which is not something I'm terribly fond of as a reader.
Right.
Which is probably why I don't write that way. I don't like too much description. I like to leave something open to the reader's imagination. So, we drop these very brief descriptions of breadcrumbs along the way to give the reader a sense of what we're talking about without spending 3 pages on it.
I remember the days back in, let me see if I can reach this. The old gray mirror ain't what she used to be. Late 80s. Yeah, mid to late 80s, early 90s. I'm thinking of Thomas Wolfe. Tom Wolfe.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Bonfire of the Vanities. I'm thinking of later the Man Aloud, Man Manor, whatever the hell it is. Point being, you could open you could open a Thomas Wolfe book, chapter 1. You could be 6 chapters in, and he's just described walking into the room. Do you remember those days?
I do. And, he's very good at it. You have to be really, really good at that. There's a lot of authors who are, and they can keep you engaged. I'm not one of those people.
Yeah. So I remember this one particular scene. I think it was Bonfire of the Vanities. He's just describing a guy waking up with a hangover and having been a sizable drinker back in my old days, I would read that and go, "Oh my God, he nailed it." But here's my point. I don't want to lose the point. Those days I don't want to say they're gone, because it's to how are you like read your books. But I've noticed between the shortening attention spans, the battle for those shortening attention spans, people just kind of want to cut to the chase faster. And I don't know, is that me because I'm impatient, because I'm trying to read so much, because we've gotten conditioned by, yeah, I know he walked into the room and it's a brightly lit room and there's tapestry and he's wearing a certain kind of shoe, but I don't need that detail. Where's the fucking gun and who's going to get shot?
I do think there was a style of literature at a time, and we often joke about the James Michener school. Chapter 1, the Earth cools. It's like, and by page 185, we're introduced to our protagonist, and that was a way of doing it. Leon Uris wrote sort of that way too,
Right.
and I do think that, and I'm going to say that you're probably right that it's an attention span and it's a social media and an internet world in which I don't think either of us have the luxury of waiting 15 pages for something interesting to happen, because my wife gets books from our local library system and she opens it and reads chapter 1. And if you don't get her chapter 1, she closes it and gives it back to the library and she's not out a cent. So that's our challenge today.
Remember the days when you would I'd go to a bookstore and I'd buy a stack and I'd get home and I'm like, oh my God, I cannot wait. And then you realized I got a couple of dogs in here. And because I paid for them, you can be sure I'm going to read them. But those days are kind of gone. And I like your wife's philosophy. I like the way you it's just, and we had this conversation last time. We were talking about how I used to I'd give you 3, 4, maybe 5 chapters. All right. Then it became, again, with time and with age in this 4 years of the show, I'm like, let's see what he can do in the first chapter. Now it's your prologue. And here's the challenge. Can you get me to do this? Oh. And if you can, I'm still with you. And both of these books did that.
You're right, Dave. That's the big challenge, especially in our genre. We write stories that have urgency to them and that have deadlines associated with, our protagonists figuring things out. And our readers are all driven to look for those things and to look for them very quickly. So yeah, if we don't deliver in the first couple of pages, our book doesn't even get off the shelf.
Yeah. You both got a chance to meet my lovely wife, whose name is right here, because she saved my ass by breaking out Zoom when the other stuff didn't work. And I have loved, we've been together, 10 years now. And I have watched the pattern of her digesting a series of televisions, shows. And she'll say with time, she has come to a place where she goes, oh, ticking clock. I'm like, what's that, honey? She goes, there's the ticking clock. And I'm like, bravo, young lady. So now she's starting to pick up ticking clock and notice how that last chapter, or i.e. scene, made me want to see the next one. I'm like, now you've got it.
Yep.
It's beautiful. Let's see. Let's dive into just a couple more things, because we've been at this for a while trying to get our show going. The Blue Horse wrestles with generational guilt. What's got you thinking about this, Bruce? Get on the couch, make yourself comfortable. It's therapy time with Dave and Dana.
So as you mentioned earlier, Dave, Porter Beck is pretty introspective, and he comes from a lot of secrets in his past, which start to be revealed in the first book, The Bitter Past. hence the title. And there's a lot of things that are secretive, not only in those areas of Nevada that I described that are run by the federal government, but in people's lives. And he's no different. And guilt is one of those emotions and one of those things which at times plague us all.
Mm-hmm.
Regret and things that we didn't do or we should have done differently. So those are always good tools to use, I think, in a story, provided that you don't overdo it, because they're very interesting and very relatable. So, yeah, it's a big part of generational guilt. Is a big part of this whole series, really.
Or if you grew up in the church with a father as a pastor like me, you know your fair share about guilt.
Right? Yeah.
Jesus. Well, I want to bounce over here to the chain reaction corner and say one thing about James. What I dig about your style is that the way you do this, and we touched on this earlier. You dance between action and satire. The way Limerick disarms with a phrase. I love that. That just witty repartee. Is that one of your own personal hidden secret talents?
I mean, I am an ex-theater guy, so I have a pretty good sense of how to do dialogue and how to make dialogue carry freight. You don't want dialogue for dialogue's sake. It always needs to give you some character revelation, or it needs to have a clue towards a reveal later on. So that helps a lot. Secondly, I just really wanted to have a loquacious, fast-talking guy with street patois. He sounds pretty uneducated because I had never read that before. And I thought it would be really fun to have. We have our fair share of stoic heroes. And I just thought, wouldn't it be fun to have a guy who just won't shut the hell up? And the other thing that it was really fun to do with this character was when it comes to having sex, he's instantly 15 years old, and he's the least cool guy in the world, the least suave, the anti-Bond. He's always like, sex, that would be marvelous. Yeah, let's do that. And I just thought, I hadn't read that before. Wouldn't that be fun to have a dude who's so insanely uncool? So those are just, they were things that entertained me. And Bruce and I have talked about this in the past. We're our own first audiences. We both write books that will entertain us. That's the first goal. And I really wanted a character that would make me laugh.
Yeah.
I think, James, though, one thing that's really fascinating that I think the audience here would get a kick out of is describe how you learned how Des would speak. How did you pick up that dialect?
Yeah.
Some of it is from former amateur theater days. Some of it is watching a lot of British television. And then I got really, really lucky. I had a friend, and you've probably had her on the show, Meg Gardner, who lived in England for quite a while. And I asked Meg if she would look at an early manuscript and correct my British isms. And there's an editor at Minotaur St. Martin who is British, and she also read it. So first off, I have a pretty good ear for dialect. And then I also had two beta readers who said, no, I think you're fine in that. The other thing, and I've never revealed this to the audience, is that Des grew up in what you and I would call orphanages in parts of England, Ireland, and Scotland. And the reason I did that is that nobody could ever say, oh, no, nobody from Ireland would say that. Only somebody from Scotland would. And I'd say, I'm inculcated. I'm fine. I got that.
That's
So
great.
if there's some Englishisms, if there's some Irishisms, there's some Scotsisms in there, I'm okay with, I can pass muster with any of that.
Yeah. That opening prologue, folks, if you pick up a chain reaction, you're gonna get it right away. And I'd sit here and read it for you, but I don't want to bore you. But yeah, there are ways that you turn a phrase, and just little phrases that sends it home right now. There is a line. Don Winslow drove out here a couple summers ago. We were talking about one of his books, and he said a line. I have never forgotten it. And I try to remember it every time I sit down to the keyboard. And that is, every line must pay rent.
I like that.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, damned if that doesn't, I don't have it on a sign. It should be a little note right here attached to one of my 4 monitors. It says that very thing, because And Bruce, you and I've talked about this before. It's interesting how I just came up with a really cool line. I love that line. Oh, yeah. Well, does it fit? I'm not sure it fits. Doesn't really matter. It's such a sexy damn line. But if it doesn't really move that story forward, you're really just kind of taking up space. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think there's no question, and we all three of us know that too painfully. You sometimes write stuff like you said, Dave, and you just sit back and you go, "Gosh, out of all the stuff I've written today, that's the most brilliant line." And yet, when you go back and look at it again, and you're doing your edits, um, you go, "Well, yeah, it's a nice line, but it really doesn't move the story forward, or it doesn't even move the paragraph forward. It's 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 just sitting there. It's taking up space. And in this business, if you're not your own editor, and you're not your own best editor, you're probably not doing this well enough. We all have editors, to help us hone these manuscripts before they go out. But you have to make those painful decisions occasionally, and sometimes it's like, oh no, I'm going to have to take that out. But you do it.
How many times have I? Go ahead, James. What were you going to
I
say?
was going to say we both are edited by a guy named Keith, and Keith, in one of my first books he ever edited for me, said to me, "Hey, on page 32 you have this scene with from so and so's point of view, but on page 314 so and so needs to know that too. Would you consider changing the POV?" And I thought, good Lord, he understands my story at a granular level that I don't.
Yeah.
Oh my God! And we are insanely lucky to have a. I take all of his edits come in the form of suggestions, and I take 97% of his suggestions because they're simply that good.
Yeah, they're great.
And what's his name again?
Keith Kayla.
Kayla?
Mm-hmm.
Kahla.
And he's hilarious, and he has an encyclopedic knowledge of 1980s pop culture, and he's a guy to go have a drink with too. So, I mean, we're super lucky.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did the same thing with me on my first book. I had a joke in there that Porter Beck likes to tell jokes, and he's a funny guy. He's got a quick wit, and he's he's got good timing, good comedic timing. But Keith sent me back his edits, and like James said, I typically take just about all of those right at face value, and don't make any changes. I like those suggestions. But he said, "I think you don't need this joke." And I said, "Oh no, no." I was like, "That joke in my mind is essential." But then I made that comment back to him, and his response to me, he said, "Okay, I like all of these changes that you adopted or made, and I like this suggestion, but you still need to get rid of this joke. It's not doing anything for the story. You've already established that Porter can tell a joke, and but this is not the best place for that." So, and he said, "Believe me, some people are not going to get it." He said, "That's the most important part of it. Some people won't get it. So either change the joke or get rid of it." So,
There is a line, you guys have both been around this business long enough to know, and I think about this every time I put my ass in a seat in a theater. If you're doing something on that screen that takes me out of the story, that
yep,
makes me go, wait a minute, what does that mean? What did he mean by that? Well, you have just burned up some important real estate
Yeah.
because you've now here's what's got to happen. I've got to stop and I got to go, what did he mean by that? And then you got to get me back into the story. And what have I missed in the time that it took me? I'm not saying I'm going to sit there and go for 10 minutes. You know what? I don't know exactly what he meant by that, but I could assume, But the
Yeah.
yeah,
point, Ben, is to his point, did it move me forward? Can everybody get it? That's a really, really, really solid point.
It
And I
is.
never thought about it. But boy, which is why beta readers,
yeah,
besides editors, which is their profession, are what I think are so important with beta readers, because you might have 10 people read it and one person go, I have no clue what that means. Then you have to
yeah,
stop and go, is it in my best interest to leave that?
right.
Yep.
Yeah, we have kicked that blue horse. Um, All right. What scares you, James, most as a storyteller? That A, your fiction might be prophetic, or B, no one is listening until it's too late.
The prophetic thing is weird because I'm by training a journalist. I came out of newsrooms, and I wrote a book that was called, eventually going to be called Crashers, and it was about NTSB, the teams that investigate airline crashes. And I got it finished, and I got a literary agent in New York, and the agent called me and said, "Oh my God, this is a great book. It's going to be a hardback, paperback. It's going to do really well. We're going to take it to Hollywood. This is great." And that was in August of 2001. And 1 month later was 9/11. And this was a book about terrorists bringing down multiple airliners. And a third of the book took place in New York City. So that book became thus the most unmarketable book in the world. Uh,
Ouch.
because all of the publishers are in New York City, or not all of them, but a whole lot of them are.
Yeah.
And so that was a case where I had to take the story and I had to take the book and put it on a shelf for 7 years. So we finally got it sold to Minotaur St. Martin's in 2010, but it had been sitting on a shelf for a long time before that got published. And then I wrote another book for Keith, and I wanted to set it in the safest place possible, somewhere in the Middle East that hadn't changed in a long time. It was very, very stable. And I thought finally, well, Syria, nothing ever changes in Syria. And then, you know, Arabic Spring hit me about 3 weeks after the book landed. And so sometimes you just stumble into the world orbiting out from underneath where you started your book. And when that happens, you just have to say, well, c'est la vie, c'est la guerre.
I think that's just a great lesson in life, James, that we should be a little more flexible and just roll with the punches, because so much of this world is fluid. And I mean, this world right here, see, people talk about, where do you come up with your great ideas? To those people, I want to backhand them. But I say, oh, if I'm waking up in the day, I'm probably going to have a dozen. But when something great comes along, you just go, okay, not a big deal. I got plenty more where that came from. Put it on a shelf and keep moving forward. I want to ask you something as we start to kind of wrap up. Both of you guys, if you could go back to your younger selves and sit down and have a conversation about two things: the passion with which you chase your dream of writing, and the business in which you have to occupy in order to be successful. If you could go back and give those, kind of those insights, knowing what you know now, what would you say to those youngins, that young Bruce and that young James, as they were starting out? Bruce, you're first.
Well, I would certainly tell myself, you have the right instincts. This is what you should be doing, but you need to believe it more, because it's so easy when you're younger. I'm like so many authors that I know who really didn't start seriously writing fiction until a little bit later in life because they had life to contend with, and everybody needs a job and bring home a paycheck and all of those things. But I wish that I had the confidence much earlier to pursue this and literally spend a great deal more of my time, trying to go after that. Had I done that, I think, I probably would have a lot more books out there by now. So that would have been my big piece of advice to me.
James.
I probably would have told my young self that the trick, and we've talked about this, about writing for yourself, being your first reader. Don't ask what is hot. Don't ask what is popular. Don't ask what genre is making the most money. None of that matters. At the end of the day, you're going to spend the better part of a year with these characters and with this plot, and it better be entertaining you. So don't go and chase whatever cute teenage vampire is the hot market of the day. Only write stories that are for the one purpose only of entertaining yourself. If you do that, then you might go ahead and find a literary agent, and then you might find an editor, and then you might find booksellers, and then you might find an audience elsewhere. But if you don't do that first, you ain't going to do the other stuff.
Yeah, and one of the things, Dave, before you go on, I think just kind of adds on to that nicely is that you always hear the advice: write what you know. Well, when you're really young, you don't know shit. You don't know anything about anything, and you don't have any life experience. So So I think one way to take that a little bit differently is write what you're interested in. So like James just said, if
Yeah.
you can find something that you first and foremost have an interest in, you can make it interesting. I don't care how much you know about it right now. You can learn it. You can
Yeah,
do the research. You can make it interesting to people if you have enough interest in it.
that's really
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. You made me think of two things as you were describing your younger self's conversations. I started piddling about um, back when I was living in LA in my first tour of duty, and I was doing a satellite radio show. And I remember one day, satellite radio is different than live radio, as you can imagine. Live radio, it's, 7:15, 15 after 7 o'clock. We'll check weather right after this. But coming up on the Today Show is la 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 la. Everything is very, very meh. But in satellite radio, you have to speak in generic terms because I was in 8 different time zones. So I couldn't say, "Hey, good morning, it's Dave here playing your favorite country hit," or whatever, because in this time zone, it might be evening, and in this format, it might have shifted to album rock. That's not the point. The point is just being present and aware of, what you're doing. The other thing is, so as I was just kind of bored with that situation, I'm like, I'm just going to go down the hall and pick up my secretary's typewriter. I'm going to take it down the studio. I got another 4 hours of this nonsense to do. So I started banging out little tiny short stories just for shits and giggles. And that's how it started. But it was a year later, and here's my point I'm trying to get to. I remember sitting there going, I'm now living in New York City doing a number one morning show. And I'm sitting in my apartment after the show and I'm just banging out stories. And I was a big James Patterson fan at the time. And I'm like, I think I can do this.
Yeah.
And I keep writing. I'm like, this is really kind of good. But I didn't have the confidence that it really truly was good. And because I didn't share it with anyone, I didn't have any feedback.
Hmm.
So I agree with you. I'd say, like, man, if you just have a inkling that you think you're good at it, just pursue it. Somebody somewhere is going to tell you that it sucks and that maybe you should do something else, or it's going to catch on. Anyway,
I have to say, I was at a writing conference this weekend, and I was presenting, and I ran into a woman who heard me present the year before, and she said, "You said one thing at the conference last year, and I typed it out when I went home, and I put it in my conference lanyard, and I've hung it on the wall behind me." And what I said to her is, I don't want to ever hear anybody in this room refer to themselves as a would-be writer or a future writer or somebody who wants to be a writer. If you're slapping nouns against verbs, you're a writer, and start
Yep.
identifying yourself in the mirrors. Look at that writer who's shaving and start thinking of yourself as a writer. And she said, I am a writer, typed it out, put it on a lanyard behind it. And she said a year later, she's still using it as inspiration, which was one of the most gratifying moments of my career that I'd said something that was less dumb than a lot of other things I say, and it affected somebody.
That is a
wow.
great piece of advice and something that, I think most writers would appreciate. Yeah, for sure.
Well, and it's absolutely, and it's so funny the lack of giving ourselves permission. I don't know where that silliness comes from because I always look at it this way. This is going to be might feel a little obtuse, but bear with me a second. So I remember as a kid growing up in the church again, thinking to myself, do you think if if there is a God and God instilled in me a particular desire and talent, do you think I would say, zing, there you go. And I'm a pretty good writer. And then you start to writing, and then one day he goes, yeah, you're not going to be any good at it. I'm like, that doesn't really make any sense. If the desire is there and the ability is kind of coming along, then I'm probably a pretty good chance I'm going to be halfway decent at this. I don't know if
Right.
that's too obscure, but you see what I'm saying?
No, and we talked about this last time. Nobody's born Mozart, in the writing world for the most part. It takes a lot of reps. You gotta put in hours and hours and hours of
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
practicing writing, just like the violin or the piano. It's no different. And like you said, Dave, if you believe that I've got a little bit of a talent for this, and you like doing it, then the more time you spend doing it, the better you will get.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like
100%.
my golf game. Where do you think in the wide world of sports do you think I'm just going to take a bag out today. When's the last time you went out, Dave? It's been about 4 or 5 years, but I think I've got this. And you go out there and you smack it and you're just screwing off and horribly. Well, did you put in the time? No, not really. Well, then how can you get any good? Yeah. All right.
And did you take lessons? Did you find somebody who's really good at it, or a
Yeah.
professional in that, and take some lessons, learn
Yeah.
how to do it? It's the same with writing. You gotta
Sure.
you gotta learn those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think writing is an art either. I really think of it as a craft. And it's not that dissimilar from cooking. I love to cook and I love to write. And the more you cook, the better you get. The more you write, the better you get. And the more you figure out the easy paths in the craft, Bruce he nailed it. You've just got to stick to it and put in the hours and do the reps. Absolutely right.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we've already been given our best writing advice, but if you've got any little cherry to toss on top, I'd love to hear it.
If anybody ever tells you there's only one way to write, you should nod politely, shake their hand, walk outside, find their car, and pee on their tires, because it's just not true. And I've heard so many writing coaches and seen so many writing things where everybody must outline, or all writers must do X, and no writer must ever do Y, and that is nonsense. There's a million ways to do this, and when you find your zone, and you'll know it's your zone because all of a sudden you write 8 or 10 pages, and the next day you read them and you think they're really good. That's your zone. Whatever that is, that's the right way to write.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. Find what works for you. James mentioned earlier that the two of us have completely different writing styles in terms of, our process. Actually, we have two different processes. And that's fine because it's what works for us. There is no secret sauce to things you have to do to become a good writer. Yeah, you have to put in the time.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean you have to do 5,000 words a day. It doesn't mean that you have to write every day. There's a lot of people in this industry who'll say you must write every day. I don't care if it's 5 words or 500 or 5,000. You must write every day. I don't think that's true either. I take time off. Life gets in the way. Sometimes I just want to take a break and let my brain cool down.
Yeah.
So you just got to find what works for you and stick to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was teaching a class one time, and a young woman said, my problem is that I have lazy, horrible work ethic. I have a day job, and one weekend I will try and sit down and write, and nothing happens. And the next weekend I'll try and sit down and write, and nothing happens. And the next weekend I try and sit down and nothing happens. And then I'll have that weekend where I generate literally 100 pages, and I don't know how to get out of this horrible, horrible habit. And I said, show of hands in the room. If you did 100 pages in a month, would you be happy? And everybody said, well, of course. I said, don't change what you're doing. Just don't allow yourself to feel guilty about it. If you said, I am not allowed to be guilty about it, this is my way of writing, you got yourself a system.
Yeah. Yeah. And the one other thing that I would mention to people is, this is me personally. I don't believe in writer's block. I don't know what that is. I've never experienced it because I've always told myself, just start typing. Even, I've got some idea in my head, just start typing. What you vomit out first is probably going to be crap. But if it's not there in a crap form to begin with, you can't make it better. So just start typing. It will come. You don't have to spew perfection right out of the gate.
Yeah.
We don't have writer's block in journalism. We call it unemployment.
Yeah, that's right. Right. Exactly.
Perfect is the enemy of good.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Golly day, we have learned so much. We're smarter people now. Folks, you want to learn more, to go to bruceborgos.com and or jamesbyrnethriller.com. The books, of course, we're going to throw them up here. Chain Reaction by James and The Blue Horse. Yes. Look, how nice is that? We're going to show our goodies. Yeah. Guys, I'm so glad we were finally able to pull this off. I think everything's working.
Thank you for your patience.
This was great fun. Thank you.
So much fun.
Your #1 podcast for stories that thrill, the Thriller Zone.